Yeah, Haribol. So, last time we looked at these two verses from the Gita, 9.4, 9.5. Maya tadamidam sarvam jagadavyaktamurtina mattani sarvabhutani nachaham teshavasthita. And the other one, nachamattani bhutani pashyami yogameshwaram bhuta brinyata bhutasva mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. So in these two verses, we saw how Krishna is, talking about the all-pervasiveness of his existence. He's talking about his involvement and his non-involvement also. So we discussed different aspects of those verses, if you recall, how this Abheda, which is being spoken of in the Gita in so many places, like this verse also 9.4, has an importance, right? So we touched on that, and we also saw how he is. All beings are in him. He is everywhere. So that's why we discussed how Krishna is not a jealous god. He is not threatened. Okay, as in the Pandavas are showing their love for Bhishma, then Krishna is not wondering, oh, if they love Bhishma so much, then how is it that they can love me also? Correct. So it's nothing like that, because Bhishma is included in Krishna in that sense, right? So Krishna is not threatened. We saw that, but at the same time, he's saying he's not in them, as in he's not in them, as in all these vibhutis which are there, which are Krishna, which are representing Krishna, are still different from him, right? So though Mate Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, we say it is the divinity of Krishna and our parents that we are respecting, but at the same time, they are not Krishna because he is not in them. Correct. So we saw that. And then we saw that how, he is the maintainer of everyone, but still he is not a part of this cosmic manifestation. If you remember, we discussed this, how he's not directly responsible for what is happening here. We can't put that responsibility on him, saying that he is. Okay, so if anything wrong happens, we discussed how in so many faiths, people think that God gives all these punishments. He is not giving this punishment. It is very clear. He is not, right? He has a separate thing as well. Okay, so we spoke about the whole process of Purusha externally and Rishi within, where internally you are giving full credit to, whatever wonderful things are happening in your life to him, but at the same time, you're taking responsibility for your life. So these are some aspects that we discussed. Okay, so moving ahead on the 9th chapter. Today there are 4 or 5 topics to discuss. The first one is, we are continuing with this point, how Krishna's system of accessibility, the Krishna system which is there, the Sarva Vyapatva. This is amazing if you think in so many ways, because what this also means is, and which we see in this particular 9th chapter very clearly, that a person can access Krishna also in many ways, right? So just look at this beautiful verse 9.27. Yet karoshi yadashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat yet tapasyasi kaunteya satkurushva ma darpanam. So look at this word to word translation. It is so amazing, right? Yet karoshi, whatever you do. Yadashnasi, whatever you eat. Yet juhosi, yet tapasyasi, whatever tapasya you do. Right? Yet dadat, whatever you give in charity, everything, right, do it as an offering to me, he's saying. If you see, in a way, this verse, what it is actually doing is, it is showing how the Krishna's magnanimity, as in his system of accessibility. It is so vast that, people can be engaged in so many different kinds of tasks, right, or so many different kinds of activities, but they can connect it all to him and do it for him. And he's not at all saying that, only these things are for me. He's not saying, for example, that only the task of a Brahmana is representing me. So as we know, even the servitude of a Shudra represents Narayana, correct? So that's what it means by Yat Karoshi Yadashnasi. Anything a person is he is a Shudra, and in that service attitude also, there is Narayana. So basically, the accessibility which is there now of Krishna, it's really amazing. If you think about it carefully, no other religious system or no other book also would have this magnanimity to say that everybody can be accommodated in this, and that's exactly what Krishna is doing. He's accommodating everyone. right, to him. They just have to, whatever they are doing, they have to have this internal mood that this I am doing it for Krishna. Krishna Arpanamastu. Okay. So whatever I'm doing, Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, I'm maintaining my family, I'm working, such and such. Consciously he has to maintain that, which of course is possible only when he has some spiritual connection, some sadhana or whatever. But the point is, the accessibility that Krishna is giving is amazing, right? And that's why many times we see also this, if you read in some places, Prabhupada writes this point as well, that Kanishta Adhikari, the deity worshipper is, the one who's worshipping the deity, sometimes is called as Kanishta Adhikari. That's like one example that is given. One may wonder why it looks a little harsh actually if you think about it. A deity worshipper is so close to Krishna, why he's given as an example like this as Kanishta. The point is, it's not to say that all pujaris are Kanishta. What it means is, one who is worshipping the deity, he could develop this tendency that Krishna is only here. Okay, he could develop that tendency. Krishna sirf ye murti mein hai. Okay, and he is not there everywhere. But the fact is, it's not like that. The fact is not that. He is sarvavyapi. He can be seen in every situation. Okay, so because this tendency is there for the murti pujak to come to such a thinking that my Lord is only there in this, and only through this you can access him. That is why he is given as an example of Kanishta. Okay, this is again because of this accessibility of Krishna. Even if you see some other verses in this chapter of the 9th chapter, like for example, let's take one verse. Let's take the 16th verse. If you see here, the 16th verse of the 9th chapter, Krishna is saying, Aham kritam, aham yajna swadaham aham aushadam, mantroham aham evajnam aham agnir aham hutam. Krishna is saying, it is I who is the ritual, kratuhu. That means any ritual done. Okay, any ritual done is also Krishna. Okay, see, so the point is, so many times we say, spiritual, ritual, we try to make a distinction. But the thing is, in that ritual, if that mood is there of doing whatever that ritual is as an offering to Krishna, then it becomes Krishna. Okay, so we discussed this right as well in our group today. That spiritual life or bhakti is all about why I am doing it. Okay, so if the mood is there that okay, I am doing this ritual for Krishna, then he takes it like that, and that's what he's saying. Aham kratur, aham yajya, swadaham. He is the oblation. Whatever oblation is being offered into the sacrificial. He's saying aham aushadam. I am the medicinal herb. Okay, so even the entire system of medicines which are there. Okay, so that is why there is this whole thing also in Dhanvantari Ayurveda or general understanding that when anybody takes a medicine, one chants the name of Narayana and takes the medicine. Okay, because that has that, because ultimately all these medicines are also coming from Krishna's system only, right? Because all the jadi booty, all the chemicals, whatever it is, whether it is natural, whether it is artificial, whatever it is still representing Krishna. Mantroham, all the mantras that are chanted, right? The ghee that is poured, okay, the agni, the offering, everything I am, he's saying. Basically, what all these verses are indicating again, it is this accessibility. Okay, accessibility as in Krishna, you can see Krishna in your work, you can see Krishna in your food, you can see Krishna in your charity, you can see Krishna in your medicine, correct? You can connect to him through everything. Okay, so the only thing requirement is you have to be conscious. Okay, so it's ultimately about the consciousness that all these things I'm doing for him. Okay, I'm taking this medicine for his pleasure. Okay, but the brilliance of Krishna is that he has described his accessibility in such a way that anybody in any walk of life doing so many activities, in each of those activities, they can still remain connected to him. Okay, so this is the first thing we see from the 9th chapter. Okay, so I gave these two examples of these two verses, 9.60, 9.27. You could find some other verses as well in this, which are connected to 9.4, 9.5, which Krishna is talking in terms of how his sarva vyapitva, right? How he is all pervading, maya tadamidam sarva. So from that, these two verses and this particular point comes up. Okay, good. So we'll go to the next point quickly. The next point is about dharma and bhakti. Okay, so we had started this discussion today morning, but here we are going to continue that. So if you see carefully now, there is a reason why we are taking this, especially Shraddha. So bhakti means Shraddha, because in 9.3, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Ashraddha dhana purusha dharmasyasya param tapa aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsara vartamani. He's saying those who do not have faith in devotional service, they have to come back to this material world. Okay, so please note what he has said, that those who don't have faith in the process of devotional service, or that means those who are not situated in transcendental activities, they have to come back to this material world. That's what he has said. Okay. So why this is again very important is because in all other religions, if you see now, in all other religions, the Abrahamic faith, everything, if you don't have faith in God, you go to hell. Okay, that is their description. Okay, so their description is what? If you are a heretic, that means you don't believe in their God or their prophet, you go to hell. That is how they will describe it. There is no other thing. There is. So the thing is, this whole concept of dharma and shraddha is only there in Bhagavad Gita. And this is what we are going to explore. Okay. So the Gita is clear. If you don't have shraddha in bhakti and you're not connected to transcendence, you have to come back to this world. Okay. So, but there is nothing like you will go to hell. When do you go to hell as per Gita? In the 16th chapter, Krishna explains that the three gates to hell are kama, krodha, and lobha. Okay, so he has there not defined going to hell as a result of faithlessness. Rather, he has described going to hell as a result of certain Rakshasi activities, right? Okay, in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, if you read, all the Rakshasi activities which are there, which are again impelled by these three things: lust, anger, and greed, kama, krodha, and lobha. It is only by these three that you go to hell. Okay, and not because you don't have Shraddha. Okay, if you don't have Shraddha, you will come to the material world. That means you will remain here in the 84 lakh species. So this is how the Gita presents it, which again, if you see, is very logical also, right? It's very logical and it is perfect because you are not connected to transcendence. Then how will you get out of this world? But at the same time, just because you are not connected to transcendence, it doesn't mean that you have to be pushed to hell, right? You have to do something like a Rakshasa. Only then you have to go to hell. Otherwise, you are not going to go. Okay. So this is how, okay, our scriptures in the Bhagavad Gita especially, they are distinguishing between dharma and bhakti. Okay. So dharma is also there, right? In this verse, in the 9.2 also, the word dharma comes, right? Raja Vidya Rajagusham Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshavagam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Okay, Krishna is calling this as the king of knowledge. And incidentally, this king of knowledge is being referred to as the entire Bhagavad Gita. So we have to be clear about that, because even Prabhupada writes in the purport that, this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada is talking from the second chapter onwards, and there is a huge purport to this particular verse. But the point is, this chapter is called as the king of knowledge. And in every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, including the 9th chapter, right? Though it is talking about most confidential knowledge, Krishna is obviously talking about bhakti as you go towards the end, manmana bhava madbhakto and other things. But otherwise also, if you see in this chapter, Krishna has included so many people, right? Like if you see in the 9.15 verse, right? Krishna is saying basically that ekatvena pratatvena bahuda vishvato mukam. Very interesting verse if you think about it, right? Krishna is saying that I can be understood in all these ways, right? Ekatvena, pratatvena, bahuda, vishvato mukam. Ekatvena means as one, that means as the impersonal Brahman. Pratatvena means as various devatas in many, and vishvato mukam means in the universal form. Krishna is saying others who engage in sacrifice. After talking about the Mahatmas, the pure devotees. The point is, this chapter also, though it is a chapter of bhakti, it is a central piece of Bhagavad Gita, but still this chapter has accommodated, all these people, right? It has accommodated all kinds of transcendentalists. It has accommodated people who will do all kinds of work. It has accommodated the medical people. It has accommodated those who are doing yajna rituals. Everyone is accommodated in the chapter. So that's how the Gita 9th chapter is, if you see all the verses, right? So why we are saying this is because if you compare, if you see previously in the 6th chapter, Krishna has discussed about yoga, right? So basically yoga, dharma, these things, as I said in today's discussion in the morning, is they are focusing on how to do something. Okay, so they are focusing on how to do. whereas bhakti is focusing on why I'm doing something. Okay, so let's think a little bit deeply about this. How and why. These two questions are slightly different, right? So, how I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and why I'm doing whatever I'm doing. Okay, how I'm raising my children, that becomes right. So in that, all the schedule will come. So generally, when you say how, it is more process oriented, correct? It's process oriented. How means process oriented, and how is related to the external world in terms of external activities, in terms of your relationships and everything. That is what the question how addresses. Whereas why addresses consciousness, why addresses the mood. Why am I cooking? Okay, so I am cooking for Krishna. So that's a mood which is there, right? That's internal. That's a consciousness which is there. Okay, because the activities are same, correct? Of a devotee and non-devotee, externally many things may be similar, but the main difference is that for the bhakta, it is about why he's doing something. Okay, and he's very clear from morning to night. He's getting up in the morning. Why he's getting up? Because he wants to chant. He wants to do his spiritual activities, right? Why is he going to work? To earn money so that he can maintain his family in Krishna consciousness. He can give charity, so on and so forth, right? So if you keep asking the question why, then the answer is all related to Krishna and bhakti. And if you keep asking the question, how am I doing? How am I doing this? Am I doing this the way it is to be done? Then you are talking about the process of doing something. And that process of doing something is what is called as dharma, the external world perspective. Now, why this is important is because, um, the Prakriti, if you see the material nature, it is so amazing. It is so neutral in a way, right? The Prakriti is very neutral, as in irrespective of your faith, you may believe in anything, right? If you do the process properly, she will award you or punish you accordingly. Makes sense? So for example, let's assume that someone is not a devotee of Krishna, okay? But that person is very regulated in their eating habits, eats the right quantity at the right time, never overeats, correct? Takes care of all those how aspects. So that person doesn't get any disease or anything, correct? So we may wonder that he is not a devotee of Krishna at all, but he's fine. Okay? But on the contrary, I may be a devotee of Krishna, but if I'm not going to eat properly as in if I, like I was saying, right? So if I offer pizza and I eat it at midnight, okay, at midnight I'm taking pizza prasad. So now the pizza which is there is Krishna Prasad. So the why part is answered. Okay, the consciousness is clear. I've offered the pizza nicely to Krishna, now I'm honoring it. So why is very clear. But the how part of it, how am I doing it? How am I eating? What time am I eating? So that's completely contradictory. Okay, so I'm getting punished. So this is how Prakriti is. She's very neutral. Okay, so even if somebody is an atheist or whatever, as long as they are following the how principle carefully, they can also be happy in this world. Okay, they can also be very happy in this world. As in, they will never find any situation where it is not that just because they are atheistic people, just because they're atheistic people, they will necessarily get punished. No, it doesn't happen like that. Okay. So this is the how and why. And again, we see this, for example, in Bhishma's life, right? So again, Krishna. Now, what about Krishna's position? Interestingly, Krishna's perspective is he's not only looking at why you are doing something, he's also looking at how you are doing it. Okay, so that's why, yada yada hi dharmasya or whatever. He's looking at how the person is doing. Okay, so for example, Bhishma Pitama. Now, why was he fighting against Krishna? We all know that he was fighting against Krishna because he was enjoying Virya Ras, right? He was enjoying shooting arrows at Krishna, seeing that blood mixed with the sweat. He was getting ecstasy in his heart. He was getting pleasure. So the why part was very clear, right? He was doing all this in service to Krishna and Virya Ras. But the how part, how was he doing it? He was doing it by taking side of Duryodhana, okay, in the external world from a process perspective. And that was not appreciated. I mean, Krishna couldn't take that, as in at least externally, okay? And he had to be brought down. Okay, so the point here is, if we always keep asking this question of how and why, then we will understand what is dharma, what is shraddha. Very clearly, we will understand. Okay, now why this? Another very important application of this is with raising children. Okay, so in raising of children, the how part is very important. So So we always say, children have to be raised with discipline and so on. So basically it is all about the how part. That means how they eat, how they sleep, how they are doing everything that they are doing. So right. So dharma, if you see, it gets instilled from that. Okay, the answer to that how. And in connection with everything, with our parents, with our ancestors, how are we respecting our ancestors? How are we, careful about the environment? Whatever. So everything would come in that dharma perspective. How am I working to earn my money? So everything would come under that dharma. So just these two words itself, right, clarify many things. And as we were discussing in the chat today morning, okay, if you read that 70th chapter of Krishna book, it is so amazing. It describes in great detail how Krishna is doing everything, right? How, like Narada, it is said Narada goes to different palaces. In one palace, he sees that Krishna is, doing the process of Garbhadan Sanskar. That means he's doing some yajna or something, perhaps with the mood of doing Garbhadan Sanskar that night with his wife. Narada sees that. Another palace, he sees that he is searching for, he's discussing how to get a good husband for their daughter. Okay. Another palace, he's welcoming a daughter-in-law in their house. Another palace, he's seeing that is worshipping the ancestors by doing tarpana. If you read that entire 70th chapter, it is all about the how part. How Krishna is getting up in the morning. Okay. How he does meditation. Everything is the how question. Okay. From that, we could understand the dharma part of it. So generally now in India, at least till 200-300 years back, the how was very uniform. By and large, people did the how part very similarly, everybody. So that's why society was also not too dysfunctional. Today, unfortunately, increasingly, that how part is being attacked, as in the way, like for example, in so many places we see that, or in so many homes we see that people don't cook at home; they just order food and eat, and so the how part is getting attacked, right? How you eat. Okay, so every time you order and eat food like that, this was never like that before. In fact, if you see in previous times, even rich, opulent food, people would eat very rarely. Like nowadays, what has happened, like Puran Poli, we may make Puran Poli anytime. Aaj mane to we just make Puran Poli and we eat. But traditionally, technically, every item was made only on some functions. Even when we were child, we have experience, right? Some sweets and all would be made on either Diwali or some festive occasion only they would make it. Nowadays, what has happened, maybe because of a problem of plenty and because there are not too many children and a lot of resources, so the how part is really getting damaged, right? As in, right? So the dharma is getting broken over there. Okay, so this is the problem. So now we're going to discuss. So what happens basically, right? As I was telling you, while dealing with the world, so that's why Vastu, astrology, all these are very rule centric. These are all answering the how question, and devotion is very love centric. Okay. Now, why both are needed? Okay, so why both are needed? If you think about it, let's take the example of Krishna himself, how he did. Now, if you see Krishna, when he dealt with the Vrajavasis, it was only on the love platform, correct? He never, with the gopis, he doesn't discuss any philosophy of how to live in this world. I mean, maximum what he does is after the Raslila, he sends them back home. That he does. He says, "Chalo, now everybody go home and be engaged in your beauty." But otherwise, he is not giving them a lecture on how they should do their swadharma. None of that stuff is there, right? Because it's all about love. So I'll just tell one pastime in this connection, which I heard recently. So this is from the writings of Sriman Vedanta Desika, who is Acharya in the line of Sripad Ramanujacharya. So he's describing the Rasa Leela of Krishna. So please hear this narration. Okay. So Vedanta Desika writes that in the Rasa Leela, what happened is when Krishna blew his flute, all the gopis there, right? They left everything and they came to him. And it seems when they came to him, they started dancing. The Rasa Leela started. And it seems when they started dancing, they had so many bangles in their hand, and most of them were village girls, so they had a lot of glass bangles or whatever, different types of bangles were there. Then they had this payal on their feet, anklet. And so as they were dancing, these bangles were making a sound. They were colliding and making sound. And similarly, even that payal was, right, it was because of the dance movement, it was also making a sound. And the gopis, they were also giving tala. We say tala, right? With your hands, when you clap, then it is called as a tala. But Desikan writes that because most of these gopis were village girls, their tala, their bangles clinging with each other, their anklets producing that sound, that did not go along with Krishna's flute. So Krishna was singing one particular raga on his flute, playing a note on his flute, but all these sounds that were emanating from the gopis, bangles, anklets, they did not go with it. The tala was off track because they were not some learned, what shall I say, Carnatic music or classical music experts. They were simple village women. Again, you see here, the how part is not at all addressed. How the singing is happening, at least from the gopis' perspective, was not addressed. But the why part was very clear. They were all there because they were in love with Krishna. Okay, so they all started dancing like this. So when they started dancing, it seems what happened is that all the devatas, they assembled above. And the devatas, as we know, they were also watching the Rasa dance. So when the devatas were assembled above, they thought that Are Krishna is playing such a nice note on his flute, and these village girls, their tala, their clapping of hands, their bangles, it's not at all in sync with the notes played by Krishna's flute. So they thought what we should do is we should play our instruments, which are much more louder and which are perfectly in sync with Krishna's note. Okay, because let's remember, if you see now what shall I say, the devatas are perfect in the how principle. They're very clear about the how. Okay, why में कभी कभी मार खाएंगे शायद, but how में कभी मार नहीं खाएंगे वो लोग, correct? They are very clear about how to play instruments and all, because the dharma part is perfect. So they all started playing. But it seems Krishna was not very happy. Krishna was thinking that, what is this? My devotees have come to dance, and these people feel that their instruments only match my music flute note, and whereas these simple girls who have come to dance with me, their notes are not matching. So it seems what Krishna did, Krishna started playing the flute in sync with the clapping of the gopis. Okay, so generally it's the other way, right? Generally it's the lead singer who plays some instrument and all the other people, they clap in sync with that. But here what happened is because Krishna thought that, hey, look, these devatas have come and they want to sync their instruments with me, but I want to sync my music with my devotees who are here. So what he started doing is he started playing the flute in such a way that it was in sync now with the random clapping and the bangles and the anklets playing music of the gopis. In this way, the orchestra was wonderful. Okay, so in this way, Krishna accomplished it. So basically, when we hear all these stories, one thing is very clear, that Krishna's dealing with his pure devotees like these is completely on the platform of why. It is just on the platform of pure love. Krishna is saturating them with his love. They are getting saturated. They are showering their love on Krishna. And in this way, a very intimate pastime is happening, right? So nobody is kind of really thinking there about all these technical things as to about how things are to be done, because that's not the place for all that. Okay. Anyway, continuing this pastime a little bit before we come back to our Bhagavad Gita discussion. So it seems what happened is that all the gopis who came, they were thinking, they had one issue with the flute. The flute which Krishna was playing was in one sense their competitor, because they were all eager for the nectar that comes from the lips of Krishna. But this flute which was there was always on the lips of Krishna, tasting that nectar. So these gopis, initially they thought they saw the flute as a competitor, but then later they thought, see, both we and the flute, we want to share the same property. Okay, we both want the property of the nectar from the lips of Krishna. So because we both are aspiring for the same property, it is better not to fight. Like suppose two brothers are there, they want the same property of parents. It is better to come to a mutual understanding rather than fight on that property. Because if they fight, then they may not get anything. Rather, when they come to an understanding, at least both can get the property share. So the gopis were in that mood. Now, when the gopis were in that mood, they also wanted some mediator, right? Like we all know that there is this mediator, people employ mediator to get this stuff. So these bangles and these anklets of the gopis, that acted as the mediator, basic and right. Is that all these ornaments of the gopis, they started telling the flute that, hey, my dear flute, you are very close to Krishna, and one side of yours is on Krishna's lips and other is touching Krishna's ear. Okay, so you can tell Krishna that once a while, when you're off Krishna's lips, the adharam, the nectar of Krishna's lips can be tasted by the gopis as well. So in this way, there are so many sweet exchanges that are going on between these wonderful devotees and Krishna. Okay, so this is the platform where Krishna is not dealing at all with dharma. He's only engrossed in Shraddha and love. Okay. On the other hand, if you look at Krishna talking to Duryodhana, okay, in the assembly, when he comes as a peace messenger, there Krishna is not at all talking about Shraddha. Krishna is talking only about dharma. Krishna is talking to Duryodhana what is fair, what is not fair. Krishna is saying that, see, technically these people have completed their 13th year. Please give them their share of property. At least give them 5 villages. He does all that, right? He's talking only from the external perspective. Why? Because Duryodhana is not a person who can even comprehend Shraddha. Krishna doesn't say anything to him about, about why he should have faith in him. He doesn't talk to him about Atma, Paramatma, nothing. Because all this Atma Tattva which is there, faith in Krishna, this is not for Duryodhana. At least if Duryodhana can come on the platform of dharma, that is it, fairness in dealing. So this also indicates that when you talk to very unreasonable people, the least we can expect from them is to come to a platform of dharma where we can function in the external world properly, correct? Because otherwise you can't talk to these people at all. Like you see all this hijab controversy which is going on and all that. If you say carefully, it's very difficult to talk to such people about faith because, right, it's just not possible. Okay. But coming to the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita is special because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about both. As we have seen in the first 6 chapters of Gita, and even here we are seeing now, Krishna is talking about dharma also and he's talking about bhakti also. So that's why it's very unique scripture, Bhagavad Gita. Unlike with the gopis where there is no dharma charcha, it's only all shraddha, love. With somebody like Duryodhana, it's only about, punishment and, what is fair and this and that. There is no discussion of any love and Atma Tattva and all that stuff. Okay. But when you come to the Bhagavad Gita, both are unified. Okay. Both are unified. And this is something very special about this book, which is not there anywhere else in the world. That is why it is Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya. It is a king of all knowledge. It is so amazingly presented because it has integrated 2 things which are both necessary, correct? Which are both necessary. Okay. Because as we see this also in modern problems. If you see now, like if you see with this hijab problem and all, it is, when these people are there who are only Shraddhalu, and who don't have, see, because in these Abrahamic religions, they don't have this concept of how to do things or, that focus is not there at all. It is all about just you have faith in the prophet, you have faith in God, and that's it, right? So they start only from that, all their discussion there. The starting point is that, the ending point is that. And if you don't have faith, you are an atheist, and it's all like that, right? Even Christianity, Islam, all these religions. So because of that, what happens is because of not having any background of dharma or importance of dharma. Like for example, if you ask them, if somebody is, very nice in the world in terms of interaction, but is not a devotee of your God, will he get any good destination? They will say he will go to hell. But in our Bhagavad Gita, it is very clear such a person can go to heaven also, correct? Krishna has said in the Gita in places that you just by doing your duty as a Kshatriya, if you die, you go to heaven. There is no question even whether you are a devoted Kshatriya, non-devoted Kshatriya and all that. Because the point is execution of dharma gives you that result. It is temporary, agreed. It is temporary. From that heaven you come down. In the 9th chapter also Krishna has said, Tetam bhuktva sargalokam vishalam chine punya martyalokam vishanti. After your credits are over, you will come back. Krishna says that. But the point is, it is only Sanatana Dharma where only somebody didn't do any bhakti and shraddha, only dharma he did. Of course, we are not recommending that. We want people to do both. We are very clear about it. But I'm saying the greatest of Sanatana Dharma is this, which is not there anywhere else, correct? Which is not there anywhere else. And that's why these other people, these Western scholars also, when they studied the Vedas, they always got confused. Like just to give you one example, they said that when the Western scholars studied the Rig Veda, what they did is They counted how many times Indra is mentioned in the Rig Veda. And then they counted how many times Vishnu is mentioned in these Vedas. And they concluded that Indra was more important in the Vedic times and Vishnu was not that important. I mean, they came to this conclusion based on counting the number of times Indra is said, because Indra is said more. Jagabar in the Indra is said some 40 times and Vishnu is mentioned only once in the Veda. So their conclusion was, then Indra is only more important from the Vedic perspective. So like that they came to conclusion. But what they could not understand is Indra is mentioned more in the Veda because generally the Veda is addressing the Dharma platform. Okay, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And if you look from the Dharma platform, Indra, Vayu, Agni, Varuna, all these people have very important positions. Correct? Their position is much more important, right? Okay, so it is. I mean, to give a very it's a little gross example, but to give an example, like when you build houses, right, the number of toilets in the house may be more in number than the number of temple, right? We may have only one altar in the house, but there will be 3 bathrooms and WC set up. Okay, because these are all important in the external world perspective. Okay, it doesn't mean that they are more important than the temple. No, the temple is obviously the central point of the house. But given an option, the first thing that people are going to talk when making a house is all these things only. Where are the WCs and where are the bathrooms, right? So similarly, the Vedas may have a lot of discussion about Indra and various devatas because of the role they play. Okay, because of the role they play. But what happened is these fellows who were there, they could not understand this only. See, because again the same point, they could not understand what is dharma, what is bhakti, none of it. So they actually did that, the Indologists. They counted a number of times all devatas' name is mentioned, counted number of times Vishnu is mentioned, and concluded that because devatas are mentioned much more than Vishnu, the Vishnu was not important from Vedic perspective. Only in the Puranic model, Vishnu and Krishna and all came. So these were the conclusions they came up based on the statistical counting. So it was as stupid as someone, right? You understood the point. Someone counts the number of bathrooms and other things are there, and number of temples, and says that, oh, this was more important. No, that's not the point. These were for the external world process thing. Okay, so like that. Okay. So the point is that this knowledge now of Bhagavad Gita in so many ways, it is again, if you see, even in the Indian psyche, it is there. Okay, see, because in India, if you see carefully now, in different places. Okay, so if you see even with various folk traditions, so I had this experience, right? I think I shared once also on the group that close to this Vada, we went to one place where there was this person from the Adivasi group, right? He was a preacher, and he was basically stopping the conversions in that area, and he was telling people that you should not drink, you should worship the cow. He was telling them stories of Krishna from their own tribal perspective, right? So when he was talking about Krishna and all, from the tribe, so generally if you hear these tribal traditions and all talking about Krishna and talking about cows and everything, you will see that what they are saying, what the Brahminical society is saying, there is a synchronous nature between both of them. That means they both are not out of sync. Okay, so it may appear that the Brahminical tradition is, slightly more refined, evolved, whatever, but at the same time, the same concepts are there in their own rustic ways in these communities, which may be very simple in their living and everything. So this is again the beauty of India, where again, because of the accessibility which was there in Varnashram to Krishna, every community had this understanding and connection. And this permeates all spheres. Just to give one example, if you see, we all know this, right? In the Indian army, when they catch these Pakistani, when they sometimes kill these Pakistani soldiers on the border, we all know that after they kill, they actually give them a very honorable burial. Okay, if you know 1999 war, India, Pakistan and all, when these Pakistani fellows were killed, the Pakistani army refused to take them back. But Indian government and Indian army cremated all those people according to their religion. Because the point is, though the Indian army is perhaps obviously composed mainly of Hindus, Sikhs and all that, they know very well that faith is okay. Let's their faith is different than ours, but that respect for the body is there, the dead body. only very brutal civilizations are there, countries, which when they kill the enemy, they, dismember the body and they try to show that we have, that means there is no dharma, because these people, what happens is, because of a lack of dharma in their religious tradition, they don't even know that a dead body has to be respected. It is not there only in their culture, in their understanding. So these are all the after effects of this particular point, that we are saying, that one needs to get these two together. And let's be very clear that if somebody cannot get them together, okay, then there will be problem. That means if there is Shraddha anywhere without dharma, it will basically lead to centralized control. That means there will be some mullah, somebody, whatever it is, right? He will want to control. He will want to control using faith as the instrument. And then all these things will come. They will pronounce fatwa. They will say that, oh, he doesn't have faith. He must be thrown out. He must be punished. Correct, like that. And unfortunately, you see that actually even with our devotees, especially the Western people, who sometimes don't have connection with this entire dharmic background, right? So then what happens is, because of a lack of connection with the dharmic background, and because of a lack of connection with society in general, and placing so much focus only on faith and love to Krishna, sometimes what happens is, when they see that someone from their perspective has had a different perspective to some issue, they blast that person so much, you just cannot imagine that. Okay, this happens actually. This happens with anybody in any religious system who has unfortunately given only weight to his faith-centric system, without that entire gamut of Shraddha being there. They tend to be, so that brutality of the Islamists and others, that may be at physical level, whereas here the brutality may be at the mental level or at the word level, but it will be there. It will be there. Like we have discussed this many times. Even up till recent, this problem has been there. We all know, right? We have discussed this point many times. Like Jayadvaita Maharaj, he corrected, the Bhagavad Gita, made the second edition, or did things like that. So the response of that, even in these days, by many people is extremely violent, because they don't want to see only the bigger perspective and all that. It is only about that faith. It is about those words exactly, and that's it, right? Because when you remove dharma out of the system, then you just don't know how to deal with the external world properly in one line. वो मालूम ही नहीं है फिर. Okay, so that is why the Gita is teaching us that dharma with Shraddha creates actually a very nice system, okay, which is there, which is much more appreciable, sustainable, and so on. Right? Otherwise, it's only too violent. Okay. So now coming to one or two last points, and then we will take questions. Yeah. Now this word. Okay. In the second verse of this 9th chapter, you see this pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam susukam kartum avyam Krishna. Pratyaksha means direct perception. Okay, so we all know this. Pratyaksha, we use this term, right? Pratyaksha, Anumana, Shabda, the three methods of acquiring knowledge. So here, Krishna is using the word pratyaksha. Okay, one has to understand it, direct perception. So if you remember, once I had quoted this also, I think it's Sanatana Goswami's statement, where he basically says that among all the evidences that are there, pratyaksha, direct perception, is having the highest value, in the sense of, like, if you see spiritual realization, right? This is spiritual realization. One is what is said in the Shastra. Okay, that is, of course, Shastra is the topmost. There is no question about it. But the thing is, when somebody follows the Shastra, and someone gets realization, that realization which they have personally experienced is higher than anything for them now. It is higher than even the Shastra, right? Because till now, the Shastric injunction was an injunction only. It was still external, at least from their perspective. But now what has happened is, it has been perceived in their life that I followed this and I got this particular benefit. Okay. So that is why this direct perception, it is extremely important in every phase, even in spiritual life. Whatever we read, whatever we hear, ultimately we have to experience that in our life. Only then our entire faith in that will become strong. Without that direct experience, how long can a person pull on saying that, oh, this is there in the scripture, so we will accept it? No, one has to experience it also. That's a must. Okay, so pratyaksha is very, very important. Okay, now we will have some other discussion also in this context. Now, you see, pratyaksha, now, so I was coming across this particular thing in a Vedantic course that I'm doing, that there are three things which you see. One is Prakriti, okay, the external world. One is the Atma, and one is the Paramatma, the Lord. Okay, so there is Prakriti, there is Atma, that means the self, and there is Paramatma. Now, interestingly, as per Vedanta Nyaya first, and Vedanta also, Prakriti, you understand Prakriti by Pratyaksha. Okay, because Prakriti is something perceivable, right? So you connect to Prakriti by Pratyaksha only always. Because that is something perceivable, and perception has first value. Because if something is perceivable directly to the senses, then why not? Of course, there are limitations of the senses in everything, but that doesn't mean that perception has no value. Those limitations of the senses are spoken about in order to tell you that you cannot understand Param Satya through your senses. But that doesn't mean that material objects only cannot be understood. Okay, so that's also why in our deities also, if you see, first there is Prakriti, right? Like we say Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan. So first is first the goddess who is there, Bhumi Devi or whatever, right? So they are all the Shakti Tattva. They are representing Prakriti only, and it is only through that we come ahead. Okay, so this is the first thing. And Prakriti actually makes us bow down also. Just imagine somebody sees a huge snake or a huge flowing river. You automatically bow down to Prakriti. It puts you in complete awe and reverence in front of her. Correct. So Prakriti is indeed like that. And another point actually about this Pratyaksha is about even association with the gurus. If you see carefully, one needs Pratyaksha. That means one needs this Vapu association as well. Many times in philosophy we say Vani, Vapu, both are same. It's correct. Vani is equally important as Vapu and everything. But at the same time, every disciple, he should have that direct perception with the guru as well. That direct relationship. It is very important. There is absolutely no question of minimizing the importance of that. Because of practical considerations, we sometimes say that, oh, that is not available, so Vani is there, and one has to be happy in Vani as much as Vapu. That may be an adjustment, but certainly the importance of Vapu can never be minimized because it is Pratyaksha. Vapu is Pratyaksha. You are sitting right in front of your guru, experiencing that multi-dimensional personality and hearing. I think this lockdown, we understood this one thing, right? Because most of our classes, everything were on Zoom, not only this class, but by and large, all classes. With our spiritual master also, we are hearing only on Zoom or whatever. It is completely different from sitting in front of the person and experiencing. Because when you sit in front of a person, there is a multi-dimensional personality that you experience of the spiritual master, which is simply, is not there on any such online platform. Okay, so Pratyaksha, so all this is in connection with Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmyam. So that is very important, right? So one cannot. And also, like if you remember last time, I think I gave the story of, maybe I don't know, the last time here I spoke in the Bhagavatam class, the story of Tukaram and that Teli, right? I think we discussed this one. So there was this Teli, the person who removes oil. He had started writing songs like Tukaram, imitating him. And Tukaram told him that, why are you doing that? You write according to your experience. Because again, Pratyaksha. So he told him that, see, you're experiencing, you're removing oil daily from whatever you're doing. So in that you experience Krishna. So that's what it is. And there is a lot of emphasis of this in Bhagavad Gita. In fact, some commentators said it's because of this verse later that Arjuna is asking the 10th chapter, Keshu Keshu cha bhaveshu chintosmi Bhagavan Maya. Please let me know in what forms can I always remember you. And that time Krishna is not speaking about incarnations. You can remember me as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha. No, he says, look at the mountains, look at the rivers. Among the rivers, I am Ganga. Among the mountains, I am Himalaya. So, he goes on to describe everything which are pratyaksha, practically perceivable only, right? Because that's the starting point. Okay, so I was mentioning earlier that the traditional understanding is that matter is understood by pratyaksha, the Atma is understood by Anumana. The Atma is not understood pratyaksha, but Atma is understood by Anumana. Okay, because if you see carefully, everything that we say about how, about consciousness, about who is the conscious force seated within the body, all that we are employing Anumana in that. Okay, and by Anumana, inference, you can easily understand that there is this conscious perceiver who is seated within the body. But it is said, when it comes to Bhagavan, you can understand him only by Shastra. So in Vedanta, there is a sutra which Jiva Goswami quotes also in Tattva Sandarbha, which is called as Shastra Unitvat. That means only from the Shastra Vakya you can understand Bhagavan. I always would feel this strongly because, when we would give this DY session, we have the session 1 that talks about God's existence. And there we actually try to prove God's existence primarily through Anumana. All of us, I'm sure you have given DY session 1, you know what I'm saying. We try to prove God's existence by Anumana, by saying that how complicated the universe is, so it must have a creator. That's Anumana actually. That's Anumana Praman that we're using primarily in that session to explain the existence of God. So it is said that Nyaya uses Anumana to prove God's existence. But Vedanta says that Anumana cannot be used. And that actually makes sense. Because the universe, it is so automated also in a way that just by that Anumana, you don't come to an understanding of Bhagavan. It's very difficult. It gives some indication perhaps, but it's very difficult through that Anumana to understand God. One has to accept Shastra and only then come to that conclusion. But then one can practice that and experience Pratyaksha, the spiritual thing. Okay, so again it comes to Pratyaksha. Okay, so we have come back to the circle. You understand everything around the world by Pratyaksha. You understand Atma by Anumana. You understand Param Satya by Shabda. But then when you implement whatever Param Satya says in your life, you can experience by Pratyaksha. Okay, so ultimately it has to come to that. Okay, so because everything cannot be. So in so many ways, when you hear all this, we get our feeling that how our Shastras, Acharyas have been very pragmatic in whatever they said. They never said that just because it is written in a book, you have to necessarily believe it. No, it is there in the book, agreed, but you have to experience that in your life. So this personal experience is given a lot of importance. Okay, personal experience rather than just something said in a book, so it has to be followed like that. Again, coming back to all this hijab and all, if you see, these people, unfortunately, they have, that whole personal experience of what you are or what you are doing, that's not there only in their system. It's all about what is told, whether it is right or not right or whatever, there is no debating that also. You have to just follow that blindly. So these are some other systems that unfortunately exist in the world, right? Right. So yeah. So I'm just concluding with this one thing. I think this we have already discussed once long back, but I'm just showing that. So why I'm showing this is because many times in our preaching or presentation also we have to be careful not to make a distinction too much between science and religion the way the Western people do. I'll tell you why. Because in the West, science and religion have always been at odds with each other. Because science came out of revolt against religion, right? If you look at Galileo and all these people in the 15th century Europe, they came out of that. But in our Shastra, if you see carefully, we don't have that enmity with science, actually speaking. We don't have that enmity. Because from our perspective, Pratyaksha has its importance. We have never given Pratyaksha any less importance. Okay, so that's why we don't have that type of contradiction. We may have contradiction only with some speculative ideas. So I think I presented this long back, but I'm not going to read everything here. But I had presented this, if you remember, since it's in connection with what we're talking today, I'm presenting. If you compare the Pradhana description in the Bhagavatam and the Big Bang theory, it is actually the same explanation. It is the same explanation. What is said in the Big Bang theory, if you see on the right side of the slide, we have discussed this in detail. Same thing is said about Pradhana. Same thing is said. Only one difference is there. Okay, where here it is Mahavishnu who is glancing, and that is not prescribed here. Okay, so for example, see the cause. In Srimad Bhagavatam, time is injected by Mahavishnu. The cause is unknown in Big Bang theory. They are not saying that they know the cause. They don't know the cause. So there also, if you see, there is a connection only, correct? And if you see that whole description about how all the elements are created, right? Like in our Shastra, we talk about sky created first, then air, then fire, then water, then earth. And if you see the modern descriptions of space, clouds, light, water, earth of the Big Bang, how the elements are created is exactly the same thing. So why I'm saying this point is because uh, we should not unnecessarily minimize the perspective of Pratyaksha. Well, obviously all these scientists have understood all this by Pratyaksha only, by various experiences. And Anuman also. They have mixed speculation in it. But it is Pratyaksha mixed with Anumana that they have come to it. So these pramanas are never rejected like that. Especially the material domain, they can actually understand things. But when it comes to Param Purusha, you cannot understand using Pratyaksha Anumana. You have to take Shastra only. Okay. And that's why if you see that Prabhupada, the conversation is there, where Prabhupada also appears to be saying that yes, Prabhupada did not reject, but he focused on the limitations of the theory. Okay, so why I am just making this point again is because we should never in our preaching also take a stance in such a way that as if we are enemies of science. No, we are not, because that Pratyaksha has that validity. Okay, only when it comes to something like Darwin's theory, that is speculative, as in it's not even proved even from the science perspective. So that we may have some objections to that. Right, but otherwise we don't actually. Otherwise we like a Big Bang, which may seem as if it's completely contradictory, but it is not, as I showed you in that particular article. Okay, so we'll just conclude with whatever we said today, and then take questions. So I started off by talking about how, because of this 9th chapter is talking about accessibility of Krishna. 9.27, what a verse. Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat juhosi dadasi. Krishna has given accessibility to everybody. Whatever you do, whatever you are giving in charity, just connect it to me. That's all Krishna is saying. Such a liberal God, if you see, in a way, right? He is accommodating the whole world in his own thing. Okay, and we saw the other verses also where he's talking, I am medicine, I am yajna. Everything gets connected. Accessibility is super high. Okay, then we saw dharma and bhakti, how it is different. The difference is dharma focuses on the how part. Bhakti focuses on the why part. So whenever we are asking the question, how it is to be done, we are talking dharma. When we are saying, why are we doing it? Why are we doing this? Then it is the answer to that. That is for devotees is bhakti. We are doing it because we want to please Krishna, ultimately. Okay. Then we saw how it is important to unify both, because Bhagavad Gita is the scripture that is unifying both. Unlike Krishna talking with gopis where there is only bhakti, or Krishna talking with Duryodhana where there is only dharma. Because there's no use of talking bhakti to Duryodhana. Okay, so then we also discussed how Western religions or anybody who becomes a fanatic is primarily becoming fanatic because of not bothering about the external world. Okay, he's only Shraddha. That's why. Right? Like we have given so many examples. Like I think I've told this also many times. Like during the Nityananda Sabha days that I was in, one of the biggest problems I used to have is when any preacher would come and he would feel that in order to encourage people, for either monastic life or either a life of missionary, they undermine the value of family. So whenever that would happen, it would always be conflicting for me because it just didn't go well, because there is no need to do that. Right? There is no need to do that. Okay? There is no need for any preacher to say that even if your mother is dead and you're doing a seva, continue with the seva. You can't say that because that's not dharma. That's not what our scriptures are teaching, right? Let's be very clear about it. Okay, so scriptures are talking about unified dharma and bhakti only, and the Gita 9th chapter is also talking about that. And we saw why it is like that, and we saw that the role of Shraddha. Then we saw Pratyaksha avagamam dharmya. We saw how everything comes back to that and the importance of Pratyaksha. Okay, so all this is our discussion today from the 9th chapter. Thank you very much for everyone's attention. We'll just take some questions if there are any. Deenabandhu Chaitanya Prabhu, Dr. Saab, please go ahead. 1 second.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Thank you very much. Very insightful discussion on the Gita. So I had a few questions, Prabhuji. Like first, for this dharma versus bhakti. So how versus why? So I think for the how you quoted, what was that? Was it? As you quoted one verse, right? Yada yada hi dharmasya. What was that, Prabhuji?
No, I didn't quote yada yada.
How you quoted one verse, I think.
No, I didn't quote a verse.
This. If I remember, you did quote one verse from the Gita.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I can.
So I just wanted to, I kind of missed out. I missed out that verse
Yat
actually.
Karoshi.
No, Yat Karoshi, I was quoting in a different. I'll tell you what I'm saying. I'll repeat. I'll make that point again. See, for example, you see the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking about yoga, it is all about how you sit in the yoga posture. Simple example, like how you do Gayatri. If you see yoga, to do Gayatri, you have to sit in the eastern direction and do. Those who do Gayatri know that, right? You have to face the sun and do. Because in the yoga perspective, that how becomes important. How you are doing, where you are sitting, which direction. Okay. But in the devotional sense, why I am doing becomes important. Why am I chanting the Gayatri mantra? Because I am seeing Gayatri as connected to Krishna. I'm praying for that energy so that my intelligence is sharp and I don't get distracted and so on. Correct. So the point so the point what I'm trying to say is Gita obviously is talking about how, right? Gita is talking about how. And if you look at broadly, the entire Mahabharata is talking about how. Okay, so the very fact that Bhishma, I give the example of Bhishma, right? Bhishma is fighting opposite to Krishna. If you ask the question why, the answer is he is fighting because he wants to taste Virya Ras with Krishna. But how? By taking side of Duryodhana. So that is not acceptable to Krishna. So the point is the how and why answers dharma and bhakti. So the only point that I'm pleading over here is that we are all devotees, so we are interested in the why, but we should never forget that how part of it. If you forget the how part of it, we become like these other guys who either you become violent physically or you become violent mentally with other people, because then you are not able to accommodate anybody in society, right? Because see, dharma is connected to the society. It's taking everybody along. Okay, so there was this amazing, I just tell you Dinabandhu from this point, there was this discussion between one rationalist and a Christian lady. I'll share also that link if I get it. I had seen that long back. So what happens is in that discussion, that rationalist is asking the Christian lady that your parents were not Christians. So what happens to them? So she says that they go to hell. Okay. So this rationalist is asking, but you are such a nice devotee of your Jesus Christ or whatever. So won't that help your parents? She says no, because they didn't take shelter of Jesus, they will go to hell. So if you see now, because there is no dharma, so there is no connection to society only, even to their parents, forget society in general. But the point is, you see Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj's father was Hiranyakashipu, right? But Prahlad Maharaj is praying for his father's deliverance to Narsimha. He is not saying my father was a demon. And I'm sure that that Christian girl's parents may have not troubled her as much as Hiranyakashipu troubled Prahlad. Correct? I mean, we can make that assumption. Anumana Praman, we can make that assumption. But the point is, because her whole faith-centric, itna faith-centric, itna faith bombard kiya hai uske upar, she is not able to accept her parents also who did not have faith in Jesus. He said that they will go to hell only. Okay, so this is exactly the point. When there is no dharma, then you don't have any connection to your parent also. If as long as they are Jesus' followers, okay. Otherwise, I have nothing to do with them. I remember even when the school we had, BMS school and all, many years back, there was one leader who came from some temple. So he was like telling our management and everything, why you have to put so much attention on this school and all. It is very difficult. After 7th, 8th standards, students become very difficult to manage. Let them go outside. We will just do our preaching. That is good, na? Why to spend our devotee energy in running the school and all? Unfortunately, such thoughts primarily come when that connection to society only is not considered important. It's like you just want to make somebody your faithful follower and take them along. If somebody is not your faithful follower, or khadde mein gaya, kuch farak nahi padta. But the point what I'm trying to say again and again is Gita is not like that. Mahabharata is not that. It has integrated both. So one will have to take both along. Is that okay, Dinabandhu?
Yes, Prabhu. So in this context, like, we have this again, like why versus how. So many of the modern day, spiritual leaders, like, for example, Sadhguru, or like all these very popular, so they focus on the, how, right? Like, I mean, more than the why, like, because, I mean, Sadhguru, for example, like some ISKCON sannyasi was there, like, so he made some very like, very kind of derogatory comment against Sadhguru. But, like many times we are asked this, like, so what's your, or how should we, because he has some things which he can do better than us. Like he's able to convince hardcore intellectuals about at least, coming to some basic level, accepting some basic level of morality. But then he messes up when it comes to, like, I mean, he tries to also go into some, like when he talks about he's God, then it becomes messy. So like in general, like how do we like how do we approach such personalities? And when we are speaking, especially people ask us.
Yeah, I feel that he's also not that traditionalist, in his understanding of how also. Some aspects may be fine, but overall, the how aspect, actually, if you see na Prabhuji, 2-3 generations back, India may everybody answered that how very nicely. People would hardly move away from the way things were done. Correct. Like nobody would sleep at midnight. Nowadays, you see everybody sleeping at midnight. Most children till midnight they are all awake only doing some time pass. Right. That means simple example of how you sleep. It is completely ruined today. Okay, so I think that it is very important to emphasize on that how, as in, if someone could give a very traditional perspective to the how to people, then that's always welcome. Okay, but though I'm not sure about the person you said whether he's giving a traditional perspective. If he's doing that, I don't think he is. But if he's doing that, at least that much is good. At least that is being addressed, decently.
Right. Okay. And Prabhu, this point about Atma Gyan being Anumana Praman and knowledge of Paramatma being Shabda Praman, I'm a bit confused because ultimately, if you have to understand.
I don't know. I can't hear you. I don't know whether my internet is a problem or yours. Okay, I think I'll answer. I heard half of your question. You're asking about Atma Tattva. See, Prabhuji, even when we explain Atma to people, what do? We give all these examples of near-death experience, out-of-body experience, past life memory to people.
Prabhuji, my point is like why Atma Gyan is not also accessible to Shabda?
No. Let's be very clear. It is through Shabda also you can understand Atma. Nobody is saying you cannot. But the point is when a lower method, see, Pratyaksha and Anumana, if they are available, you don't even need that. Na? See, it is like this. Suppose I have a watch. Pratyaksha से आपको समझ में आ गया मेरे पास घड़ी है, then I don't need to employ Shabda. Na? The point is these higher methods of knowledge are especially used when the others don't work. Are you getting the point? So Shabda's main purpose, Shastra Yonitvat, is to explain the glories of Paramatma and the Lord, because that you can never understand only by any amount of speculation. But if you see Atma clearly, so many people understand that. Like if you see our device session 4, it is full of Anumana Praman only we are giving, right? Where we are doing so much Shabda. Of course, we quote Bhagavad Gita, a couple of verses. But by and large, we are using Anumana Praman only. We are saying that every cell in your body is changing. We are saying that, all this past life memory, near-death experience, we quote the story of Shankaracharya. Are you getting my point?
Yeah, I think I get it, Prabhuji. Basically, but
I mean, that means if Pratyaksha is working, I don't need to employ Anumana. If Anumana is working, Shabda doesn't come. Obviously, Shastra is giving knowledge about Atma. Nobody is saying it doesn't. I actually recently heard a 10-session course on Atma based on the Vedanta Sutras by one Sri Vaishnava scholar. I will take a gist of that sometime here. If you see the Vedanta, my God, it employs such a powerful logic to tell about, to describe who is the Atma. And it is all based on inference only. I mean, it is in Shabda Praman, but the logic used is inference. It is teaching us how to understand that we are not the body, we are the soul. And that is very easily perceivable. Anybody hears that, he has to agree. It is not even talking near-death experience, past life memory and all that. Are you getting my point?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Yeah. Haribol.
Prabhu, the one last point on the Big Bang theory, because I had the what do you say, like the good fortune of teaching this with you sometime. In VIT also we are teaching this Indian philosophy, right? So Darwin's theory we are very heavy against. And the Big Bang, now you're saying that we need not be so like condemning of it. But
because
I think
there is similarity in what is being said. The only point of contention is what happens before the Big Bang started. हम महाविष्णु का glance बोलते, वो लोग बोलते cause unknown, but otherwise there is similarity.
No, but I think the point why, of course, like you quoted Prabhupada. I think one of the quotes where Prabhupada is, saying, but there are many other. I mean, I remember at least there are quotes where Prabhupada is quite heavy against Big Bang, and in general, like the reason we're against Big Bang is more than the theory itself. It's the
psychology.
scientists.
It is a psychology that comes with it. I understood the point. It is a psychology that comes with it.
If you give them these verses from Bhagavatam, they will not hesitate to call it mythology, but they will expect you to take this as because they want you to have that absolute faith in them. It's the same story, like basically. So I mean, the point is, I think that's what we are trying to condemn and say that I mean.
Yeah, agreed. We are trying to condemn the psychology of the scientist. I understood the point. But why this part is also important is because, please remember again, this modern science which is there now, it came out of the Western world, where science and religion were enemies by birth. This whole science, we know, history of science in the 16th century Europe, it came out as a result of oppression of the Vatican Church and all that. Are you getting it? In India, it is not like that. We never technically had such a difference of opinion between observational reality and शास्त्रिक reality. मतलब ये झगड़ा नहीं था unnecessary. वो उनका झगड़ा था. आजकल हमने वो अपने सर पे लिए. You understood, na? In that sense, I'm addressing this point. And obviously the relevance of it. Like for example, if you see Ayurveda, it lays a lot of emphasis on pratyaksha also. It doesn't say that just because it says that how the patient should cure patient should be cured by the doctor and all. Pratyaksha is there everywhere. It's not rejected. I mean, we should not make such a mockery of pratyaksha as if इसको कोई value ही नहीं. हर एक चीज में उसका value. मतलब same thing we say, na, you're chanting Hare Krishna, you need to have that satisfactory experience of chanting Hare Krishna, no? Only then you will continue chanting. That is pratyaksha only, na? You have to perceive it, right, in your life. Just because our books say that you should chant Hare Krishna, how long will you chant? If you don't feel at least something in it. Are you getting?
Right, bro. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Uddhav Anand Prabhu, I see next.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, actually, thank you very much for very wonderful lecture. Sorry, this point about dharma related to how and bhakti related to why was like little bit confusing to me. So maybe you can correct my understanding. So dharma, how I see is, you mean to say that it is related to how the things are based on the three modes of material nature. So the activities, like how. And
bhakti, how
means
how you do it. Like simple example, how you drink water. There is dharma in it. बैठ के पीना चाहिए पानी, खड़े नहीं पी सकते, बहुत ठंडा पानी नहीं पीना चाहिए. That is all how, na? What question are you answering in that? How should I drink water? Right? How you should take bath? You're supposed to wear one towel. Correct? We say, na, you should not take bath without any clothes on. So it's about how, na? That is dharma of how to take bath. How you should respect your parents. You meet your parents, you should offer obeisances to them. If somebody's parents are departed, they should offer tarpana to them. It is all how, na? How you respect, how you show that, how you respect the environment, how you distribute your food. Ab khana bana to you are supposed to give food in charity. Matlab, you are supposed to give some part to the dog, some part to the crow. There are mantras, na, in Vedas. You keep a rice for the crow. You keep a roti for the dog outside the house, not inside the house. This is all how. It is all how. It is not answering the question why. Now, if you ask the question, why am I drinking water? Okay, well, I'm drinking water. I want energy so that I can serve Krishna. I mean, everything will come to that, no, for a devotee. Why am I maintaining my life? Okay. How you should have a child? That is dharma, right? If you have a child at the wrong time, Hiranyakashipu is born. Because you violated dharma. Hiranyakashipu aa gaya family mein. Correct? You do Garbhadan, how you do Garbhadan Sanskar nicely, you get a nice child in your house. So it's all how. That is dharma. Correct? How, I mean, everything is that. How you work, how you make money. Are you working all night to make money? Or are you working properly in the day and, are you balancing that properly? How are you doing that? Okay. Correct. How are you taking care of your child? Correct?
No, Prabhuji,
Becomes
but the
how?
point is,
Yeah.
but the point is when we go for how, actually we are result oriented, if you see, because if I do this,
No,
then
we
I
are
should
process
get.
oriented. We are process oriented, not result oriented. We are process oriented. The process, how means process.
Okay, okay.
Process means how you interact with the material world. See, what is dharma? Interact with the material world properly, interact with your body properly, interact with your family members properly, interact with your ancestors properly, interact with the environment properly. How do you dispose your garbage? Are you disposing your garbage directly in a river? That is terrible. That is adharma. Is your sewage directly going in the river? That is adharma. If that is the how are you disposing it? So you ask that question, how in every aspect of life, the answer will be, the dharmic part will come out. Okay. How it has to be done carefully. Okay. And when everybody follows that dharma properly, then it is proper, right?
Okay.
But now, but the how doesn't answer the why. Why is consciousness driven? Na? Why is consciousness driven? Why am I eating food? How I am eating food is one thing. How I am eating food, उसमें धर्म है ना. कब क्या खाना चाहिए, कब क्या नहीं खाना चाहिए, वो है ना. वो धर्म हो गया खाने का. Why am I eating? Because it is Krishna Prasad I am taking. I am taking because I want energy so that I can preach, I can chant, I can do service, whatever. So why you keep asking? Then the answer is all related to your purpose of existence. And as a devotee, since our purpose of existence is Krishna consciousness, so, in that sense, so the answer to that will be devotion.
Okay, Prabhuji, clear.
But if somebody forgets the how and bothers only in the why direction, then it can be an issue.
Okay, Prabhuji, actually one more point I was having, like we hear in Vedic scriptures about dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and I have heard that from dharma we get artha, and from artha we get kama, and from kama we get a desire for moksha. So my understanding was dharma is primarily for making artha, or how to say, opulence, not only money but kind of facility for doing sense gratification. So
It's not like that. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So basically, I mean, that's why I see always dharma to be more on a result oriented or a kind of fruitive activity kind of side. So that's what my understanding was.
No, dharma is not done. See, it's like this. You follow the process properly, then the output will come. But when you are doing the process, it's not that you are always thinking about the output. That's why Nishkama Karma Yoga is there. Na? Bhagavad Gita mein bataya na, Nishkama Karma Yoga. Nishkama Karma Yoga means what? When I'm doing the process, I'm focusing only on doing the process rightly. Result automatically comes. उसके पीछे इतना obsessed होने का जरूरत नहीं है, because that's anyway going to come, right? Are you getting the point? The result is, it's not going to happen that, for example, somebody is studying very nicely in a very planned way. Even if he is not desiring something, कुछ तो अच्छा कॉलेज मिलेगा ना, जिसका IIT नहीं मिलेगा, NIT मिलेगा, कुछ तो मिलेगा ना उसको. The point is that dharma leads automatically to artha. When you are doing the dharma, you are not focusing on that. Like for example, you are focusing on the process of having a nice relationship with your wife. The output of that nice relationship will be pleasure and everything, but you are not necessarily thinking about it, and that will automatically come anyway. So like that.
Okay. Okay. And Prabhuji, one more question I was having in relation to the other Abrahamic religions which you were quoting. So my general understanding is, Prabhuji, if we see from our scriptural, Vedic scriptural perspective, so primarily these religions are primarily in mode of ignorance. And I don't know, but how they cause the upliftment of in the mode of ignorance, because this is a little bit unclear to me. It's not that I hate them, I respect all the religion, but at the same time, calling them dharma is not very clear to me, because most of the activities which are prescribed in them are primarily, if we see from Vedic perspective, they are in ignorance. So how it actually helps the people in those to evolve?
What happens now? Sometimes even if the process is imperfect, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said about those religions, the person can be sincere. And if a sincere person takes to a process, like imagine, try to understand. See, again, you have to come back to this. Krishna, what he's saying in Bhagavad Gita, he's talking about his sarva vyapi nature, right? So in his Sarvavyapi nature, Krishna is there everywhere. Okay, Krishna is accessible by so many means, like you think Ekatvena, Pratatvena, Bhaudha Vishwatomukha. Correct. Of course, you may not come to the personal understanding of Krishna, but there are ways of understanding, right? So the point is, even these other scriptures, even with their whatever limitations, the only problem is they cause a lot of disaster in society. But if the individual is sincere, and there are many sincere people also, right, in the world. In every religion, people are good. Religion may be bad. People are good, right? So when a good person, when he follows somebody saying that, okay, this is my idea of prophet and God, and he tries to develop a love and devotion towards that person, ultimately he is accessing that Sarvavyapi Krishna only, right? As it through that person also. Are you getting my point? So the point
Yes,
is,
I agree. Sorry,
individual can be sincere, though the process is questionable.
I agree with this point, Prabhuji, but actually here I have one doubt, because I many times read in Prabhupada books that Prabhupada says that this material world like is a jail and no sane man comes here. So calling someone good who is not Krishna consciousness, how he can be good? Because finally this material world, if we see, it is made for a reformation. We want to enjoy separately from God, and that's why we have finally come here. And now the person who is of another religion in ignorance, he is equating something else to be equivalent to Krishna. So this is certainly an offense. I humbly feel like that. So
No.
this
See, I'll
is
tell
an
you.
ignorance.
No, I see. Again, I repeat my point. See, even see these processes. I'll tell you the main problem. Their main problem is they're very violent towards everyone. That's the main problem. They're very violent towards everyone. They're very violent towards those who don't have faith in them. Very violent. Okay, they don't have any regrets about killing them and murdering them and everything. Okay, so that is the fundamental tamasic nature of these religions, which is agreed. But at the same time, they do talk about whatever their idea of God through their prophet as impersonal. Maybe they're impersonalistic religions, right? So in these impersonalistic religions, what happens is, if the individual is sincere, see, it's correct that everyone in the material world, nobody is a gentleman and all that, and everybody has come here because they have some sinful desires or whatever. That part is agreed on. But the point is, if a person genuinely develops feeling of love and devotion, then he is accessing that energy of God. That's what I want to say. Basically, what I want to say is that he does make a progress. We cannot deny that. We cannot say that none of these people make any. At an individual level, they may. We have no objection to that. We have a problem with their system, which is very violent towards the world. But at an individual level, some genuine guy, he can go ahead at least to a great extent. I mean, he may not go to Vaikuntha or somewhere because that's not his goal also. But to say that he will surely go to hell only, or he will be, then we are committing the same mistake that we are accusing them of, because the point is dharma is universal, right? So the point is, even without access to the right shastra, a person could, by his own sense and goodness and past life karma, whatever, he could come to certain platforms of practice. That's my humble point. You got my point?
Yes, Prabhuji, this point is clear. And sorry, one more point I was having regarding going to heaven and hell. So now if we see, because I hear the lecture of Vaibhavanand Prabhu also from Garud Puran, so he gives many times how one goes to heaven and all these things. So they are very systematic path, Prabhuji. I mean, you do this and this time and this and that, and then you attain this. For example, it is process oriented. So for example, Grihast Ashram, I read in Garud Puran that a person who properly follows the system of the Grihast Ashram, he can, the highest planet which can be awarded to him is the Prajapati Lok, something like that. They are very systematic and everything. So how this Abrahamic religion can lead to heaven? Because the process which is there are very lot of faults when we see it from goodness perspective, from knowledge perspective. So
See, when you say heaven, if you see, even in our Shastra, there are 3 types of heaven. Okay, one is the heavens of Indraloka, which are much more difficult to obtain. Then there is what is called as Bhauma Swarga. There is Deva Swarga, Bhauma Swarga, Bila Swarga. Deva Swarga means like Indra's planet and all, which generally need much higher qualification. There is Bhauma Swarga also. Bhauma Swarga means on the level of Bhulok only, there are other planets, like we hear in Bhagavatam, different places, which have slightly more opulence for those who are slightly more pious, who may have not have that merit of Deva Swarga, but Bhauma Swarga ho sakta hai. Then there is Bila Swarga. Bila Swarga means the subterranean heavenly planets, which is that Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Mahatala, Patala. Even they have much more opulence. Heaven means a place of opulence, more than this earth that we are staying, this Bharata Varsha. Okay, more than this, they have opulence in some ways. Okay, so heaven is also categorized in many ways. There is a dream also, incidentally. Maybe it's on a lighter note. But Prabhupada one day after he woke up from a dream and he said that he saw the planet where pious Muslims go. And Shrutakirti Prabhu is asking him, is there such a planet? Or do these people get such a destination? Prabhupada remarks that yes, if they are pious, they go to that place. Okay, so of course that's on a lighter note. It's not a very serious point I'm making. But yes, the principle is accepted. If someone does good personally, good will only happen to them. Of that, there is no question. So the problem is their system. Their system is brutal. Okay, so that generally makes most people like that. So it's a very mob-oriented system. Mob-oriented system. Dekho na, it's mob-oriented. And mob, you cannot talk logic to a mob. Mob is outside any logic. That is the problem. Okay, Haribol. Yeah. Vaibhav Anand Prabhu, go ahead, please.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji, thank you for wonderful. This is, I think, one of the clearest I have seen somebody explaining dharma and the supreme dharma. Prabhuji, I have few reservations. Like you have, please clarify that. Just now you said that if somebody is an atheist, so it is not that he won't, he'll be going to hell. But many a times, even in Bhagavatam, it says that there is a special kind of a hell for a person who is atheist, because he is in some way offending the Lord. So how do you see that?
No, see, two things. One thing is I'm talking from Gita perspective. In Gita, when Krishna says you go to hell, Krishna says kama, krodha, tada, lobha. Okay, now one thing is, see, generally if somebody is not, life is not centered around God, they do commit sinful activities based on kama, krodha, lobha. Okay, but it is their kama, krodha, lobha that is sending them to hell. Are you getting the point? So that is first point. At least as far as what Krishna says in Gita, it is kama, krodha, lobha. That is what he has identified, 16th chapter. That means the rakshasa pravritti. Now it is correct that atheistic pravritti can lead to rakshasa pravritti. But the point is, just being that atheist is not causing that hell. It is that demonic nature that is causing the hellish condition. I hope they are able to make a subtle but important distinction there.
So you are saying that somebody, if normal atheist who who may have a soft heart towards the people in general,
who's not sinful. Like a simple example I tell you, Jain religion is atheistic by and large. They don't accept a God formally. Okay, they are a religion, but they don't accept a God in the sense that we know. If you really go into the details of their philosophy, it's quite atheistic. Okay, leave them. At least they are belonging to some religious system, somebody may say.
Okay.
Or maybe in modern times, you may not even have such people. But there are examples, like if you see the Shastra, there may be like some Nriga or somebody, was a Punyavan guy who never did anything wrong. There are such stories in the Puranas where as long as you don't commit any, and if you see Bhagavatam also, I don't know which reference you are giving, I'll interestingly want to look at that. But at least in the description of the 5th canto of the 26 hellish planets, all the hellish planets are related to sins that you have done, like adultery, alcohol, this, that. None of it is talking in terms of you didn't worship God, that's why you landed here. At least directly, I don't remember seeing that in Canto 5, chapter 26. Whatever, the last chapter.
Atheism is one of them. There is separate hell for atheists, it says.
No, is it one of those 26 hells in the Bhagavatam?
Yeah, Prabhuji describes in there even, same thing I find in Garud Purana also, same thing.
No, I'll just go back to that. If I remember right, I remember it only in terms of actions. That means somebody did this, then he's fried in oil, and that type of stuff. Generally, faith is not considered like that. I'll anyway get back to you on that. I'll just check if any such verses. I'll check that.
The second point is,
Yeah.
Can I ask something else, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
Okay. So second point is that there is a specific nature of how things happen in this world. Yes, that
Yeah.
is described in the Vedic literature. So, for example, if yoga process also, there is a particular way in which the yoga has to be performed, and that is described in the Vedic literatures. And if you do not do that, the result may not be the same as described in the scripture. So, with the particular dharma, there is a specific description also on how of things you have to do. And if you do not do that, that may fall under adharma. Is that right? Or you know, basically, if you do not try to follow the how of the Vedic literatures, that also becomes adharma. Is that right?
Yes, it is right. It is right. It is right. Because dharma is all related to process. You violate the process, then you accuracy. Like simple thing. I've heard this properly that sleeping in the afternoon is considered a sin. Can you believe it? Sleeping in the afternoon is considered adharma. I don't know whether sin I want to say, but adharma is considered adharma. Because one is not supposed to do that. It sounds quite drastic. Sleeping in the afternoon seems very innocent, but it is considered adharma. But whatever, Shastras know best why it is like that. So one must not, so like that. There are the how process when you don't follow, because how is dharma, na? If you don't follow that, that is adharma. Like I gave a simple example, na? Eating pizza at midnight is adharma. Adharma in the sense it's, see, adharma, it's I mean the level of seriousness is different, na, in everything. So you eat a big feast at midnight, it is adharma to the body. And you pay the price for that adharma, right? You get a stomach pain or you have some issues with it.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
And
the doctor will tell you eat before sunset. Why? Because ultimately, you have to come to dharma only. Like, you can't stay in that adharma for long.
yeah. Prabhuji, another thing is like there is description of Somras in chapter 9, verse number
Yeah.
20 in the same chapter. Can you just clarify why does Krishna says those who read Vedic literatures and then, and drink Somrasa? So, what is this Somrasa and why Krishna says like that?
Okay, I'll talk about this next time. There is something more to say in that. I'll remember this. I'll get back on this also. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
There's the last point, Prabhuji, that
Yeah.
this Big Bang model you were saying about, how this is in line in some ways with the, Vedic creation model. Prabhuji, but this is given by one of the most atheistic person, world may ever know, Stephen Hawking.
No, one second. We are not concerned about, see, try to understand. When it comes to process, na, always let's not bring the faith of that person there. That's irrelevant here. I'll tell you why it is like that. See, his psychology may be bad. We don't agree with his psychology. And that is the problem with the psychology of these people. That I already said. But my point is we should be a little careful here. Because just because the psychology of a person is wrong, it doesn't mean that whatever is saying is bogus. No, it's not necessarily like that. Sometimes even a atheistic person can talk some sense, as in, from a process perspective, from the world perspective, banda barabar bol raha hai. You'll have to accept it. Are you getting it? Na? See, again, we are falling in the trap of Abrahamic people in some way. That अरे इसका faith नहीं है तो ये एकदम label करने का उसको demon लात मार देने का उसको बाहर. No, that's a little dangerous thing because you have to see based on what process he's saying that. If he has followed the right process from Pratyaksha perspective and he's talking something and which makes sense, then you cannot reject him just because of his faith, right? Are you getting my point? We have to be cautious. But my point is, this is a little dangerous because we are again going to the Abrahamic model only, where uska faith nahi hai, to usko laat maro bahar. See, that is what the Pope was doing from 15th century. The Pope in Italy, that is what they were doing from the 15th century.
No, Prabhuji, but the intention is that he wants to establish atheism as the all in all or a philosophy
Okay,
which is.
but one second, why we don't want to take that conclusion? Na, वो कहाँ ले रहे हैं हम सिर्फ बात कर रहे हैं कि जो भागवत और जो सांख्य में जो प्रोसेस है क्रिएशन का दैट इज मैचिंग विद दिस उतना क्रेडिट दे सकते हैं ना सी व्हाई शुड वी बी सो दिस थिंग दैट अरे एथिस्ट है तो अगर ये पानी है बोल रहा है तो ये पानी नहीं है दूध है इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट ना so basically see that's what I'm saying na see we shouldn't bring our faith in that aspect so strongly also see simple thing I will tell you Prabhuji. Imagine, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is sick, okay, and the doctor who is available is a very, very talented doctor, but he's an atheist. You know that he's atheist. So Bhagavan mein vishwas nahi karta hai. But there's another doctor who's a genuine devotee. बहुत अच्छा devotee, सोला माला करके ही जाता है hospital. But that fellow doesn't know the process of surgery very nicely. आप कौन से doctor के पास जाओगे?
Of course, we'll go to a person who knows his things well. That is
बस ना,
right.
बात वही है ना. So that's what I'm saying. So when it comes to process in the external world, let's not always bring the faith aspect there. See, this is what Abrahamic people do, slamming everybody as kafir, this, that. So let's not go that far. Process uska paka, हाँ, at some point we may disagree. But where we agree, na? वो तो है ही वही. Yeah.
Okay. So just last point, this is kind of a personal question, that how do you, when you hear Bhagavatam class, or when you hear concepts which are thrown sometimes, so how do you hear those things in Bhagavatam class while you sit, or how do you accept those or not accept those? How do you manage it? So for example, you have delineated about what is how and what is why of things. Yes, and some devotee in the Bhagavatam class would say that those who are not devotees of the Lord, they are actually useless, and that is written in Bhagavatam. So how do you reconcile this when you hear such Bhagavatam classes, or you do not question that person because that doesn't looks good in the class? How do you?
I understood. No, so first of all, I unfortunately don't hear too many classes. So, but that's not the right point. I would say, see, over a period of time, we learn to filter out things also, right? Something that we don't agree, we just filter it out. So it's as simple as that. It's not that. See, and filtering out is a standard process that everybody does wherever you hear. It's not that anybody says everything, you're taking it to heart. You will accept whatever is pratyaksha for you, correct? It has to be pratyaksha, it has to be perceived by you, otherwise how will you accept it? Just because somebody is saying. I told you. Okay, Haribol. Just last question. I think Smita Nimai Prabhu's hand was up. I think he left. Okay. Hare Krishna. I think we'll end. It became quite late. Srila Prabhupada ki